Welcome to the EdTech Throwdown. Join us, Eric Geis and Nick Johnson, as we dive into today's best EdTech tools, tips, and practices. We do the research so you can teach your class. Remember to follow us on social media like Instagram, X, or Facebook by looking for the handle @EdTech Throwdown. Now please enjoy the show.
Welcome to the EdTech Throwdown. This is episode 164 called How to Combat AI Misuse in Your Classroom. In this episode, we'll talk about how to plan your classroom with a positive and proactive approach to AI use. This is another episode you don't want to miss. Check it out.
All right, back with episode 164. I think this is probably the most relevant hot topic type discussion that we're going to have. And I'm excited to kind of share it with everybody and kind of where our thoughts are and our best practices and tips and tricks involving the use of AI, kind of where that is right now.
Yeah, I mean, teachers are talking about this big time, at least at our school, and that means it's probably happening everywhere too. Perhaps because it's the end of the year and everybody's a little bit more tired and ready to be done. That includes the students who may possibly be misusing AI more than they were a few months ago.
Also, we have to take into fact that right now is the research paper season.
Right.
A lot of people are doing these as final assessments. Others are doing these to wrap up their AP courses or whatever it may be. But we are in the thick of it as far as student writing and research and thesis papers and all that good stuff. So it's coming up almost every single day. We're getting a new case. Hey, can you check this out? Can you tell me what you think? And that's what we do. We check it out and we tell them exactly what they think, but we do it in a way that we're going to share with you today.
I can get a little more specific with everybody too. Maybe this will make it seem a little more real. Maybe you've found yourself in this particular situation, but one of my colleagues that I work closely with, who has actually been a prior guest on the podcast, one of our most downloaded episodes ever, Roshni Desai, correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, she was doing an assignment. She's a chemistry teacher like me, by the way. So she was doing an assignment where students had to play around with an online simulation, answer some questions as they went, and she noticed a particular student not doing any of that, just hanging out, chit-chatting, playing on his phone during this class period. When she approached that student to sort of get to work and say, maybe you should start doing some of this, he kind of ignored her, and this went on for most of the class period. Then, suddenly, magically, this student asked to go to the bathroom, was gone for about 5 minutes, took only a phone, and upon his return, the entire assignment had been completed 100% of the way. This colleague of mine shared this particular story with me, and we talked about how this is likely a case where AI was probably used to fill in some of these responses. And that's the type of thing we're talking about here, because this comes up more and more. And I guess essentially what we're saying is we think we've got some tips for people, right? To avoid essentially this sort of scenario.
Yeah, and that's really what the bulk of our episode is. These tips, tricks, or best practices, whatever you want to be. I'll let you kick it off with our first one right after we get back from this short announcement from the Teach Better Podcast Network.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. You can find out more at teachbetter.com/podcasts. Now let's get back to the episode.
All right, so we are back to start going through some of this list. Right off the top, I don't know if this is actually part of our list of tips, but maybe it is. I consider it to be one. More just a general approach. What we're trying to avoid here is the scenario I just talked about, where you are finding yourself, let's say, halfway through the year, in our case, right towards the end of the school year, and all of a sudden you start to notice that this is happening. Notice that students are probably not writing these things themselves. I know that I've heard students just openly say it. Times when they don't think that I can hear them, times when they do think that I can hear them, and they just don't seem to care or realize that it's wrong to be using AI to do their writing for them. You don't want to find yourself halfway through the year, learn that this is happening on a significant scale, and then start to get angry about it. Because then you're just dealing with negative emotions. You're going to start feeling like you need to go after these students and catch them and get them and stop it. And that's, a thing that might have to happen in a classroom from time to time for sure. But we want to avoid that if at all possible. Are there some things you could do earlier in the year? Some things you could do throughout the year so that you don't even end up in this situation. You don't end up with a student who feels that they can go use AI in the bathroom to answer the questions for them. You don't end up with a student who claims to not have known that it was false. There's lots of ways around this that teachers have at their disposal, and we thought it would be a good thing to kind of push out there prior to the summer for anybody who's listening over the summer and kind of starting to think about what they might do in their classrooms next year. So, this is avoiding the reactive approach and then instead thinking about some stuff you can do in advance. So that was really, my first tip, is kind of just letting people know what inspired this whole list of things that we're about to give them.
Yeah, so you're really talking about you don't want to be reactive, you want to be proactive. And that's really where we need to start, is we need to set clear expectations from day one of the next school year. I mean, we're kind of already past the point where bringing in new rules is not really fair, but you do need to bring in new rules in order to establish norms for whatever research paper that's going on at this time.
Right.
So let's talk a bit about being proactive. And I know our district is kind of, at least some of the tech coaches are getting together. We've been discussing AI all year and how we can kind of develop something that's fair for teachers, fair for students, and also keeps the parents in the loop. So all the stakeholders are on the same page, and that's what we're doing. And where we're starting beyond like making a district AI policy. So that might be something that's in the works for us. Who knows? We're kind of going in that direction. I'm not sure if it will actually be adopted, but what we can do at the teacher level is we can add something in our syllabus. And one of the things that we like to suggest in our syllabus statement is maybe having a link to a poster or something like that that might say, these uses are in red. You may not use this type of AI for this purpose ever. There's no accepted way of doing that. Like turning in AI as your own work. That's very broad and specific at the same time. So like putting that out there as a red use, never allowed, should be across the board.
Yeah, you want to make sure to have some clear-cut things that are, I think when we were doing this for ourselves in our school, we called them this is the never acceptable list, the red list, as guys put it, just so students know day one, syllabus, classroom poster, club, whatever you do at the beginning of your course, these things will never, ever be acceptable in my classroom in terms of AI. You want to be black and white about those things, if nothing else, from the beginning, and we'll get into this more further down the episode, but you probably want to make that a theme throughout the year, not just a day one mention and then forget about it.
Yeah, speaking of early on in the year, our next thing is we need to have a discussion with our kids. And the kids will probably get sick and tired of this because I'm hoping that every single teacher lays out their expectations on that day one. It's part of the syllabus. It should even be part of the student and teacher handbooks in your district, in my opinion. But you have a conversation about AI. Let them discuss, consider, reflect on this. As a class, you want to generate some class norms or rules. Make them a part of that. If you make them a part of that, then they have their own buy-in. If you're just dictating a set of rules, it's, that might not go over as well as, being able to come up with a set of norms for your classroom as a collaborative group. A couple things that you need to think about is that our job in the high school is prepare kids for college. And in college, they have similar rules. They're maybe even more strict with their rules and how they can use AI in their work as far as academic integrity and dishonesty might go. In life, you might use AI for writing the best man speech, or maybe you use AI to help you write your cover letter, something like that. And, that's okay. That's good uses of it, but turning it in as your own or some of these improper uses definitely are not okay.
So I was thinking, like, for this thing where you are involving the students, you're getting them to share their thoughts. This is one of the easier discussions that you would have to lead for your class all year, right? If you pose some of these scenarios to them, some of these questions to them, they're going to want to talk about it, right? This is real to them. This is important to them. This is something the whole world is talking about, and they will have things to share. You're not going to be, pulling teeth to get kids to say something, because they're going to have stuff to say. This is like, actually important conversation, and they're going to want to know that they have a say in some of the policies for your classroom. And they're not going to be able to affect that never allowed list, but other things, maybe you can, let them get their 2 cents in. I think it's really important as part of this discussion to do some of those things that you just shared, which is like, hey man, in life, there's going to be times where you can use AI. There's going to be times where you can't. And here, for us in high school, this should probably be starting middle school, maybe even the higher grades of elementary. You want to start getting them to at least be aware of that school is the same thing. School is trying to prepare you for that world. So like you said, college is a great example. Going to be times where it's not allowed. And there, the consequences could be really serious. They might straight up kick you out. And you are gone from that school, no questions asked. Here in middle school and high school, we can't do that. We don't want to do that. But we're just trying to teach you that is a possibility. Whereas there's other times in life where it's totally okay to use AI. And it's in this gray area that we have to live. In other words, what I'm really realizing is we've got to be almost teaching kids the critical thinking skills about, is this a time where I should be using AI and should I not? And we're just starting that discussion and trying to be very clear with them what those guidelines are from the beginning for your classroom.
Yeah, and this discussion doesn't stop there. As the year goes on, you have to continue to be proactive. And that means as you assign things, assessments, projects, research papers, things like that, you're going to have to keep bringing it up and kind of going over what are the acceptable uses for this specific project. I'll give you an example real quick.
Sure.
All right, so as a science teacher, freshman year, you're teaching them how to write a claims evidence reasoning project. Okay, now this is a process, and usually by midway through, they understand. They understand what's going on here. They understand the expectations, but it is a struggle at times to get them to understand the whole process. So maybe the assignment at the beginning of the year isn't to do a full-blown claims evidence reasoning. Maybe you could use AI to come up with a question, and then from that, you could use AI to come up with a claim and maybe generate some evidence, but you're only focusing on the reasoning, where later on in the year, you'll have to do everything. You might be given the question or some piece of material that you can develop a question from and fill out everything. But sometimes as a teacher, you're up against a vacation, winter break, whatever it may be, and you still want them to get that practice. Well, maybe it's okay to generate an AI version of a claim for a certain question.
And if you think about, as you're going through that, imagine being a student in that class where the teacher says, hey, today we're going to start figuring out how to write a really high quality claims evidence reasoning paragraph. I want everyone to go to this link that I just posted and it takes them to a chatbot, safe, school approved, whatever chatbot, where they are working with the chatbot, the AI, if you want to call it that, to see how to write that paragraph. You are literally teaching that student a time where it is okay to use AI, and that is essentially AI as a teaching tool or as a writing coach. That's fine. That's better than fine. That's great. In that same, activity or in the description of that assignment, you're going to tell them, just be aware as you're working with the chatbot today to refine your CER paragraph, please know that tomorrow I'm going to ask you to write your own, let's say, you said reasoning. Tomorrow you're going to have to write your own reasoning sentences, pencil and paper style, where this will not be available. You're also letting them know that you know. You know what I mean? You are no longer the clueless teacher who either doesn't care or doesn't know that AI can be used. You are scooping all of that up together and making it a part of your class, and it just totally, not 100%, but it really deflates any ability of the student to say, yeah, this is something I'm going to use now to. I didn't want to use the word cheat at all during this episode, but I'm running out of things to say. Let's switch back
Keep
to
it positive.
Yeah.
You're just keeping it positive.
Yeah, you know what I mean. But like, you're just taking all the power back on your side by embracing it, being clear, and also clearly letting them know tomorrow you're gonna have to do it on your own, within your own handwriting on a piece of paper. And then it just becomes like a really powerful learning experience rather than something you've got to like catch them on after the fact.
Another thing I like doing is giving all the students a home reading one of the first days, and it's called, I actually forget the title of it, but it's something about machine writing.
Right.
So there's machine learning and machine writing. It's basically what ChatGPT will produce. That's machine writing.
Sure.
And the article gave a whole bunch of statistics. And one of the statistics I like is like a run of words. This particular sequence comes up in machine writing versus human writing 98% of the time. This format of words. So I give them that and I'll be like, take a look at this. Take a look at this generated answer, this generated answer. And I have a whole list of these and the statistics behind it because I'm a dork like that and I really like it. Now, am I a dork? Do I have a list? I have a list of a couple, but I don't have a list of a lot, but they don't need to know that.
Right.
What they need to know is I can understand or pinpoint or recognize machine writing. And I'm not saying it in a I'll get you type of way. I'm just saying I find this to be so cool that I'm able to kind of identify these things because I'm not directly saying I will get you.
Right.
But it is a little bit of a deterrent and it's not a lie. It's just, leaving out some of the truth. And that's not a lie. I do know certain patterns within machine writing because I've been looking at this stuff long enough.
Right.
And for anyone to say that they can't tell that, that's probably AI usage, I think a lot of us can. It's just hard to 100% prove that because of how every time we make 2 steps forward, the AI takes 2.5 steps forward.
So like, what I think I've seen is a lot of teachers, they don't like things like ChatGPT on like a moral basis, so they don't use it themselves, which means they're not familiar with it, and they may feel opposite from you. They might not feel like they can identify it, or the one time that they did try it, their only thought might be, wow, this is really incredible. This writing is way better than anything my students can do. Education is now ruined. If you start actually playing around with some of these chatbots, these machine writing tools, you really can tell. It's for me, it took a little bit. It probably took like a year of getting in there and having it write stuff, and you start to see, I don't know if it's patterns or just like it's just a very matter of fact, boring. Boring's not even the right word. There's just a quality that the AI generated writing has that you can come close to spotting. And I love how you're getting into, it doesn't have to be, hey, student X, I caught you. You're in trouble now. It can be, hey, student X, can you come here I noticed some of the writing in this paragraph that you just submitted doesn't sound a whole lot like you wrote it. I'm not accusing you of anything. Would you mind sitting down with me, or let's not even do that, because that puts more on your plate, right? Takes up more of your time. Student X, would you mind redoing this in response to this different question just right now? Give me 5 minutes. Here's a piece of paper. Could you do it again for me and try to put it in your own words the best you can? Student no longer feels like they're getting in trouble. They don't feel like you're out to get them. You're not trying to say that they used AI in a proof positive kind of way, because that's impossible. But you are letting them know you're aware and that this type of thing is happening. So that's a good example. Going along with that is one of the other things that we want to make sure you do, which is it's not just that day one of school thing, like you said already. This needs to be throughout the year, including pretty much any time you post an assignment, especially large scale things like essays, lab reports, projects that involve writing or images of some kind. You can't just assume anymore that the students are aware of everything in your syllabus. Not even anymore. We never would have assumed that, right? So it has to be part of each assignment's description. Hey, remember, AI cannot ever be used for these 1, 2, 3 things. And then maybe some special notes for this project. Consider using AI in these ways, and then list them out. Make sure those are the appropriate ways, right? But you want to build that into your large scale assignment expectations. Probably even like verbally say it at least every like once a month or something. For me, I know one thing I'm going to do is have some pre-written templates for these different types of expectations, because I know when my students go to write a lab report, I can have like a little pre-written template of AI guidelines for lab reports, and all I have to do is copy paste that template into the assignment description, and then it's there for them as a reference. It also really takes away any power they have to say, oh, I didn't know, or oh, that was in September, I totally forgot, I'm so sorry. No, you didn't forget. There's no way to forget, because we talked about it, and here it is again posted along with this particular assignment description. The point is, it needs to be like a full year effort that we just make part of how we do assignment posting now.
Yeah, I agree with all that. And one thing I want to suggest is that you have the list of uses from the get-go, and you copy and paste like in, or have some type of a template that allows them to easily see what is okay and what's not okay for that assignment. So we have our big list of red ticket items, the non-acceptable uses, and the orange, I think, is what we went. And these are the other uses that might be okay or not okay based on the teacher. We have some teachers that don't want any AI in their class. We have others that are okay with it. And if you just copy and paste those in, or have a link to, you know, a one-page thing saying that these are the okay things, and you put that at the top of your template, you should be in pretty good shape. So we did a reactive. We talked a little bit about proactive. Let's promote some positive communication for the next one. And the way that you could do that is, one, don't get the I gotcha or I caught that type of, I don't know, mentality in the classroom. Keep it positive, and also share current events about AI, current knowledge, current things. Hey, did you guys hear about this tool that came out that's going to help teachers further the positive use of AI in the classroom? Or here is an article called 8 Things Students Should Know About AI. I want you guys to take a look at this today. You have 5 minutes right before the end of the period. Take a look at it. We'll kind of talk about it for our due now next class period. And that is an actual title of an article. It's called 8 Things Students Should Know About AI. It's written by Ben Klager, and he, if you remember him from last year, he was one of the first ones that came up with one of the AI early on AI detection tools that we recommended. I will tell you this right now. He's a Stanford undergrad student. He's very impressive. He's doing a lot of positive work with AI and how students use it, and the right way of kind of going about things. So I'm looking forward to more work. You should definitely check out this article. I'm not going to spoil it by saying what it's about. I think 8 things students should know about AI is kind of going into it.
Yeah, I would take this article and push it out as part of your, maybe that day one discussion. Maybe an article like this or this one is the how that discussion will begin. There's lots of great stuff in here, and I don't want to spoil it either, but just one thing that I think is extra worth mentioning that is covered in this article is letting students know that, this AI stuff is really impressive and it's very cool, but there are some serious limitations. That's one of the 8 things that they can read about. I have found that a lot of students don't really know that when you go there and ask it to answer questions or do some writing for you, it can be wrong and is actually frequently wrong. It just doesn't say that it's wrong. You know what I mean? Like, if you ask it a question that it doesn't have an answer to, it'll just make up that answer based on the best information it has available. But the point is, it is a made up false response, and you have no way to know that. That's really important for students to know. It's really important for people to know who are going to go out into a world where this technology exists. And all of this, as besides just educating them on it, is doing that other thing we mentioned before. It's letting them know that you know all of this too. And also maybe giving them the sense that you probably know more than them about AI. So maybe in this class, they should just stay away from it and just pay extra close attention to how it's being used and used appropriately. So, being proactive, staying positive were our main 2 things here. We're going to close it out with some best practices related to all of this. And one of those, my favorite one, is literally taking time to show students examples of good uses of these AI tools. We already mentioned the claims, evidence, reasoning paragraph thing, where maybe part of that lesson is you pull up, I don't want to say ChatGPT, because I know for us, I think our student, well, you have to be 18, right? Don't you have to be 18 to use ChatGPT? Is that still a thing?
I don't know. That seems to be changing.
Okay.
It's hard for me to stay current on all that
Yeah,
stuff
it's
because
tough.
it's changing a lot.
Let's stay away from it. Whatever, plug in chatbot of your choice. Even could be a school appropriate one like
School AI.
yeah, School AI's, chatbot feature where the kids can talk in a predefined space as described by you in advance. Right? Pull that up. Show them like here's how you should be talking to this thing to get the help that you need. And now they've seen that. Again, they know that they think you probably know more than them, and it just builds in this much more positive approach to something that can get pretty dicey. But I think you should show them. I think it should be something that they see you demo live, or even better, have them demo it live. Call a student up to the front of the room, have them do it, and everybody else evaluates that. What could they have said differently to get a better response? What did they say that was inappropriate and could result in, something wrong or, air quotes, getting in trouble, academic dishonesty type stuff. But that's a big one. I think they have to see it being used in class.
Yeah, going along with showing examples of good use, we also could show them some examples of things that are going to help us continue the discussion about positive use of AI in the classroom. And that's some of the EdTech tools. You have Turnitin, which is an AI. It has its own plagiarism piece and things like that, originality report, but they also have a AI detection piece that's pretty good. The thing with that is I believe it is based on more factors than just whether or not that's AI or not, but it will also take into consideration past writings. And I think that's good, but if there were no past writings, it's going to take a little bit of time to get that repertoire build up a little bit, the collection build up a little bit.
Yeah, Turnitin does seem to be one of the better ones. Still not perfect, still probably can't be considered proof, but you could build it into classroom policies where you just say, like, anytime Turnitin detects AI, maybe the school can't, follow through with an academic dishonesty write-up or referral or whatever your school calls it, but you could say, then that would be grounds for you redoing this thing, right? Nobody's accusing you, student X, of using AI. However, Turnitin thinks it's highly likely, so I need to see you do it again. No problem. You just have to come in during study hall to write another essay for me, something like that. So that's a way where you can get around these detection tools not being 100% positive. There's also some other tools out there. We're going to bring you, some ideas for things that aren't necessarily detection for this.
You know what time that makes it, right?
I think I do know what time it is. We're talking about the EdTech Throwdown of the day.
Welcome to the EdTech Throwdown. This is an in-episode competition featuring an EdTech tool, tip, or practice that can be used to enhance learning and increase engagement. In one corner, we have Geist, the genetically confused mixture of silverback, human, and sloth, a walking identity crisis. And in the other corner, we have Nick, the pint-sized powerhouse ready to punch above his weight and give Geist a run for his bananas. It's a showdown between a confused giant and a determined David. Get ready for the ultimate clash of the EdTech Titans.
These are two different extensions. We didn't pick who would have which of these, though. I'll give you the first choice this time.
All right, I'll let you go first, but I will take revision history.
Okay, so we're talking about, guys said revision history, then that means mine will be draft back. These are extensions. That means if you're using a Chrome browser, you can head to Google, type in the draft back extension, and it'll pop up right there. You're going to want to go to the Chrome store, install it. And what this allows you to do is, as long as students have written the thing, whatever they're turning in a Google Doc, it will play back for you. It'll show you sort of after the fact their writing process. What this would unveil to you is if a student took a big chunk of writing from somewhere else, like from ChatGPT, and suddenly copy-pasted it in there, in DraftBack, you will see that automatically as one big giant copy-paste that essentially automatically shows up. And you want students to know that you have this ability in advance, because you don't want them to do that. You want to probably also build into your classroom guidelines that things must be written in Google Docs so that you can use the DraftBack extension for this checker. You know what I mean? If they say that they wrote it in Microsoft Word and just copy pasted it into the Google Doc, that's no good. Say I can't accept this because of how many ways there are to misuse AI these days. I'm sorry, it has to be written in the Google Doc, student X. Can you please do it again, or whatever? I don't know. Give them a 0, whatever you're going to do there. But DraftBack is a very popular one, and that is my pick for today's Throwdown.
Yeah, that's a great one, and the next one isn't too much different. This is very much preference, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But I do like this one slightly better. It's my preference, and it's built for teachers to show student history for edits in a Google Doc. So both of these are limited because they got to be done in a Google Doc, but most of our LMS systems are connected to Google, let's be honest. So revision history helps teachers see student progress when writing essays within the Google Doc. It's meant to help teachers guide their students through revisions, as well as ensure that students aren't just copying and pasting from ChatGPT or any other place where they could get large chunks of information. So within revision history, you can see how many edits a student made to their essay, how long they spent writing, and that could be a different type of discussion, just that little tidbit on its own,
Right.
And what snippets they have copied and pasted. One thing I would tell you in both of these tools, because I've been playing around with them a lot, is that sometimes you will see it looks like the student's typing, but there's like a solid line that goes through it as they're typing. And you'll see repetitive words. Usually that is voice to text. So what that means is it's going to look like they're typing. However, more than likely they're reading off of a different screen or a different source or whatever and voice typing it in. So that's what I find. These are all just ways of having discussions. I like to call these two my deterrents. And I just say, hey, I have two of these tools. I have a lot more of these tools that I could put it in to get more data. But I want to show you that, if you're struggling writing, struggling getting started, this tool allows me to see that. I have live evidence, and then I'm able to give you some writing strategies that might help you start your essay or your research paper. And it shows me X, Y, and Z. Usually that is enough of a deterrent that, you know, they're going to have to find something else. And they will always find something else if they want to find something else. So I like to just say that these are ways to knock off maybe 10% of this going on. You're still going to have that 2-3% that go and try to find something else. They're very tech savvy and they're going to write a code and do that. If they're that tech savvy, they've probably been doing it all along, even before AI. So I wouldn't let that stop you.
Yeah, and these tools, we can have so many deterrents, as you called it, against the misuse of AI, that at some point for the student, it actually becomes more work to use the AI and try to get around all of these tools, right? Like they have to jump through all these hoops just to avoid actually writing something themselves. Well, maybe those students start to realize it's not only better for me in terms of learning, but it's also now easier for me to just do it myself from the beginning. Because if I try to use AI, I have to cheat in this way. I've got to use text to speech. I've got to code something to get around revision. I've got to do all this stuff. Just write it yourself from the beginning. And that is a whole other conversation that you can have with them.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it just sparked up another idea for me is one of the things I love to tell the kids at the very beginning that if you don't ever do your homework, I'm going to know because it's going to show in the assessment.
That's right.
And it's exactly the same. If you have AI writing all your stuff for you, if the final is written on a sheet of paper, I'm going to know that up to this point, you probably did not practice these skills. And you got to, there's an investment value into their own education. I think that's a point that we got to drive home. But let's get into the last part of this episode, which is, this is probably my favorite thing. Out of everything that we talked about, this is probably my favorite thing. And that's having a process that goes along with your expectations. So this is the process that I like to use. All right. So first off, you may use AI for this function or this process or this purpose. You may use AI for this assignment. The next thing is if you have an LMS that automatically makes a blank document for the students, or you can add a template in there for the students, I tell them to work within that document only. If they are going to use AI, I tell them the first thing that you put on is your final product, whatever the writing is. And then below that, you write, this is the prompt that I used for ChatGPT or whatever they used, whatever tool they used. And they give me the prompt. And then after that, I say, copy and paste the output here.
Right.
That way, it's transparent. If they do all that, then I can go back in and be like, hey, you got to be careful because I see that you did make changes to this, but it's very similar to the output that was made by the prompt. All right, so you have a discussion. It's not a gotcha. It's like, hey, just be careful. Maybe go into a little bit more depth or connect two different pieces together. But, for the most part, you used AI very well here. Let's move on.
Yeah, that's actually good because at least as of we're recording this, we're seeing that type of thing come up in a lot of, higher level academia guidelines for AI use. Like, sure, you can use it as part of your process, but you need to be transparent the whole way through. What prompts did you use? What's the original thing that got spit out to you? And then what did your editing look like along the way? And if you don't report all those things and it comes back maybe via a very trusted detector that this was written by AI, then now we're into a more serious situation. But that is very close to what I think a lot of college-bound students will see later on. And it would be cool to incorporate that at least at the high school level. It's also just good practice, kind of making them report their process along the way. Which brings us to the end of this episode. I think this is a really just jam-packed with great tips type of episode. Low on the tech, high on the tips, but very valuable, I know, for me to just talk about it, and I hope for the listeners to listen to it. So I think we're done, right?
Yeah, and please, if you have anything to add to this, best practices or anything like that, please share them out with us. I'd love to give you credit on a future episode, and I'd love to build the best practice list that we have to share with everyone. Thanks for listening to the EdTech Throwdown. Do us a couple of favors. Subscribe to our podcast on any major podcast catcher such as Apple, Spotify, Amazon Podcasts, and Stitcher. Go over to YouTube, search the EdTech Throwdown, subscribe to the channel. You can connect with us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. The show's handle is EdTech Throwdown. You can connect with Geis at GeisGotTech, Nick at NickGotTech. You can write us an Apple Podcast review. You can tell your friends about www.edtechthrowdown.com. And lastly, go over and check out our friends over at the Teach Better Podcast Network, a network that we are so proudly involved with. Until next time, remember, go try some EdTech because we will do the research so you can teach your class.